All right. Good timing, everybody. You missed the business part and get to the fun part now, the interesting. Thank you so much, Donna. And I want to reiterate a little bit of what Donna said about our final speaker series of 2022. It will be held in this auditorium on Wednesday, November the 16th at 7 p.m. And this forum will be a little bit different format, as it's going to be a panel presentation and an open community discussion on the history and future of the Shepherdstown riverfront. So we're hoping that this will be a good opportunity for people to reflect again on the riverfront and some things that might be happening and what they could try to learn from our panel members, and have some input into and questions about and have some questions answered. So, and again, that will be on November the 16th. Our featured speaker tonight is Dr. Keith Alexander, Associate Professor of History at Shepherd University. And Dr. Alexander has been a great friend to Historic Shepherdstown over the years, as he and his students have assisted with a number of Historic Shepherdstown projects, and we are most appreciative of his expertise and his contributions. So thank you, Keith. We appreciate that. Dr. Alexander teaches classes in architectural history, oral history, modern history, and historic preservation. He co-directs the Historic Preservation and Public History concentration within the history major at Shepherd. This evening, Dr. Alexander is talking about living libraries using oral history to preserve the past. Dr. Alexander's students conducted interviews that are featured in the Historic Shepherdstown Museum exhibit that we opened this year, the second phase of the exhibit, entitled, as Donna mentioned, Educational Opportunities for Black Jefferson County Residents Before and After Brown versus the Board of Education. The people interviewed were suggested by Historic Shepherdstown and Jefferson County's Black History Preservation Society. Copies of the recordings and transcripts, which the students transcribed themselves, are housed in our archives at the Antler. The exhibit and this talk are being presented with financial assistance from the West Virginia Humanities Council, a state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Thus, because of the sponsorship, we asked, again, I know surveys are kind of a pain, but it's a small survey. If you can help us with our grant requirements, please complete the short survey that's being handed out this evening. And thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Alexander to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. My first challenge is going to be figuring out how to share the screen. It's a different version of Zoom. Let's see. Is someone able to help me? Ah, there we go. Not so hard after all. And minimize that and maximize that. And I hope the Zoom people are also seeing this. I'm going to turn on this mic. So,
can everyone hear me now? Oh yeah, there we go. Now we're live. Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for having me this evening. Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Donna. I really appreciate it. I also want to introduce a special guest this evening, Brian Harrison, who is a former student, colleague, and friend of mine, who really was instrumental in completing the second phase of the COVID interview. And I really appreciate his being here tonight to recognize his contribution. You'll see a little excerpt of him this evening. All right. So one of the interesting things about oral history is that it is kind of antithetical to having the talking head up here talking about it. So I kind of am going to try to bridge that by keeping it a little more informal, all right? And I want to engage you all a little bit this evening, but I still want to give a background on what oral history is, what oral history is best at, a little bit about the history of the subject itself, and really kind of encourage you all to be oral historians yourselves. And that relates directly to my topic title here, over here, Living Library, all right? Using oral history to preserve the past. And that comes from a quote that is attributed to basically anybody that they want to attribute it to. Is so widely used. But the version of the quote I like the best is, when an elder dies, the library burns to the ground. All right? Because we are all living libraries. We all have incredible stories to tell. But those stories, unless we put them down somehow, are lost. All right? And so oral history tries to preserve them and pass them on. And oral history can also be a wonderful source for exhibits like the one at the Historic Shepherdstown Museum there at the Ensler. So the workers at the Ensler at the Historic Shepherdstown Museum were able, based on the oral histories in large part, able to put together this exhibit and some of the other exhibits over there. So that's one thing that oral history can contribute. All right. Now, oral history has been around for a while. Who would like to guess how long oral history has been around? Who was the first oral historian? How long has it been around? Sorry? Adam? Ooh, I like it. The only problem is that Adam didn't really record his writing. So you're close. If that were a really good written down source somewhere, that would be good. All right? Homer, you're also pretty darn close. You're getting closer. All right? Who wrote a famous history? He is sort of the father of scientific history. Anybody know? Greek. You're so close. Thucydides. All right? Herodotus is the father of history. Thucydides is the father of scientific history. And the difference there kind of fades in the background in our postmodern times. We kind of question history's ability to reflect the truth directly. All right? But Thucydides had this remarkable contribution of going around and interviewing veterans, people that he knew in the course of the Peloponnesian War, and wrote it down, used those sources, those oral history interviews, basically, as part of his sources, along with documents and other sources for his work called the History of the Peloponnesian War, right? And so oral history can trace roots way, way back. And oral history was right up there, sort of enjoying equal status as written history until von Ranke. All right, von Ranke was writing in 19th century Germany, right? And he is sort of the father of the new scientist. All right, and von Ranke established this idea of the superiority, the absolute supremacy of the document, the written document. All right. And that was part of his efforts to make history a science right along up there with chemistry, biology, mathematics, and so on. All right. But because of his insistence on the primacy of the written source, oral history kind of was relegated to the status of myth. Not quite there, myth, not quite a myth, but pretty close to it. All right. So it really undermined and weakened his oral history. All right. Now, oral history is the history, the stories of a significant event, all right, that are recorded, usually on audio recording, all right, then written down often as a transcript, all right. The tricky thing is the word significance, all right. And for oral historians now, that significance is determined by who is the interviewer, all right. The interviewer or the project manager or whoever, they're the ones who decide whether or not their subject is significant. All right. So that is the basis for their oral history. All right. So they are reported, they are spoken memories, all right, that are written down or recorded. And oral history is not journalism, all right? What do you think is the difference between oral history and journalism? What are some of the key differences? Go ahead.
It's perspective of the color of the history, not necessarily factual, not objective.
Okay, a lot of them would argue that the journalistic interviews, the responses that they get aren't really objective either, right? So I think you're on the right track. Think about the each you read.
I think a journalist interviewer usually has a plan for them.
Okay.
He or she wants to go a certain way and will pick from the question the next question. I mean, the answer rather of the person being interviewed the next question.
Okay, yeah, I would
And
argue
there's
that,
more control.
okay,
Where I would think in oral history, a good interviewer allows the person to choose where they go.
okay, I think that the second part is really close, all right? So a journalist is coming in with targeted questions, all right? They don't really ask questions about the person's background, the person's life and so on. They usually are gonna know that anyway, all right? But they're gonna come in with a set list of questions, very targeted, go in, do these questions, they're done, all right? And oral history is much more of a dialogue, all right? It's much more of a two-way street. And one of the recipes for success for an oral history is always have a script, always have a list of questions, all right? But never stick to it. All right? You always are always guaranteed to deviate from that set list of questions, all right? And the real art lies in knowing when to sort of follow up a comment that may be a sort of stray comment that may not have anything necessarily to do with your topic that you came in with, intending to follow up on, but sort of following that thread because you know you can spark some kind of critical there. We'll talk more about that, all right? So I would say that a journalist is much more targeted, much more one-sided. They're interested in only their interviewee's perspective, whereas with an oral history, it's much more of a dialogue, much more of a two-way street, okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It depends on sort of how in-depth they go to, and a lot of there's sort of overlap. I mean, Doug Turkle, who is sort of my hero in this whole oral history, he's awfully close to his journalistic approach in some ways. In fact, he edits his interviews to the point where he is no longer there as an interviewer. If you read his books, like The Good War or Working, there is no interviewer present. It's all the story of the interviewee. All right, and it takes a lot of research to do a good oral history. All right, just like it takes a lot of research for a journalist. All right, but what an oral historian would typically do to make it really a usable, useful, good oral history would be to take a lot of life stories, life data, like where they were born, when they were born, who their parents were, who their genealogy. So that's really, you know, feeding the purview of a journalist in most cases. Okay, but it's not a clear line. You're absolutely right. A couple of other sort of milestones in the development of oral history. The Works Progress Administration, all right, back in the 1930s, had lots of people out of work and put them to work doing these interviews. And one of the things that they had them do was interview former slaves. And these are amazing stories that would never, ever have been told otherwise, would never have been known otherwise with the moms. And they're really, really interesting reading today. All right. So they captured this, and this sort of led to a new sort of renaissance in oral history, a renewed interest in oral history. All right. The Department of Defense began debriefing soldiers after major battles to find out what went wrong or what went right. Another sort of milestone in the development. All right. Presidential libraries, presidential archives began interviewing both presidents as well as people who had worked with presidents. So when John F. Kennedy was shot and died really before they could have an archive or a presidential library, what did they do? What did they do? Interviews with people who would have worked with them. All right. Technological changes are also absolutely key. All right. You read the harrowing accounts of some of these people who went into the battle to interview and debrief the soldiers immediately after the battle, and they were wearing these hugely heavy backpacks with wired recording devices. And they would unspool and they would make a big mess, and they were heavy and they were bulky and they were inconvenient, but that was the state of the art. All right. Now I grew up using what cassettes were the state of the art for these things. All right. In fact, we transcribed a bunch of oral history cassettes that we digitized and then processed. But then you had the little mini disc, and now we have a phone. All right. And now, even after that, we have Zoom, which is amazing for oral history, as I hope you'll see when we have when I show some of the interview questions. All right. I'm going to be showing some examples tonight. All right. How do you become an oral historian? Well, we've got the recording devices in our pocket. All right. And the thing about oral history is that it doesn't take a lot of training. All right. I don't like being on the stage up here for oral history. I'm a guardian of these secrets of oral history. There are some secrets. You go out there and do oral history. All right. But there are some secrets and some suggestions for success. All right. My favorite ones come from the circle. All right. The circle says the first rule is listen. The second rule, listen. The third rule, you get the idea. Listen. All right. The art of the pause. All right. This is something that my student, I struggle with initially too. I still do. All right. How long do you wait? It's this awkward silence. My kids always, to the interface when suddenly there's a 2-second pause in a conversation. You want to awkward silence for drawing our attention. But so the art of the awkward silence, people want to fill that gap, and sometimes they fill it with gold, absolute gold. All right. So you don't need a PhD to do oral history. You don't need very much training. All right. A couple hours training is probably enough to get you off and running. All right. A couple other sort of tips and tricks from the circle. Make the person comfortable. All right. Tell a joke, establish that rapport. His phrase is, you got to convince them that you are not the Messiah with the microphone. All right, I'm not the Messiah with the microphone. Mic drop. All right. So his favorite, and I love this, and I pass it on to my students. He will begin an oral history by saying, "So, tell me where we are, and tell me your name." And what is your name? And you say, Ellen Bird. Okay. And who is Ellen Bird? Burns, I'm sorry, did I get the name right? And if you were lucky, the rest of the oral history kind of takes care of itself, because you get the first, the initial reaction of that person who's suddenly faced with this question, who am I? And that can elicit remarkable responses. Okay? So those are sort of some of my secrets that are not my secrets, they're personal secrets, and they are on and running out there in the world. Another important question of oral history is, how reliable are oral history? Right? People have faulty memories. So the concern is, well, are you really remembering this event right? This is completely flawed. How reliable is this? And the response to that, I think, makes a lot of sense, is they are just as reliable or unreliable as other forms of history, whether they are written or recorded or anything. Because those were produced at some point by a human being relying on that same faulty memory. All right. And in fact, oral history is more flexible than that, because they can go back and correct it. Oh, wait a minute, I got that wrong. I see that. I put the historical document. Can't do that, the written document. All right. So in a way, there's some real advantage. All right. And the things that oral history does, absolutely, I'm trying to see what time it is. I don't want to the thing that oral history excels at, and I think you'll see this tonight, is giving glimpses into things that the normal written records simply do not catch. All right, things like what it's like to live through this event. how did you feel about living in this place? If you're lucky, you know, people love diaries. There aren't that many diaries. Unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. But you can ask somebody about their experiences on the Black baseball team here in Shepherdstown, or their experiences confronting discrimination and segregation in Jefferson County and elsewhere, or as slaves, or as another oral history we did project that somebody who might have been involved in was soldiers to scholars. So veterans who came back after serving and then attending Shepherd or other universities and experiencing a very different kind of student life with a different kind of perspective. All right. So you can get at this information you simply would not access any other way. All right. I think those are the most important of the key points that I wanted to share before I show the a couple of excerpts from some of the oral history. Actually, 5 excerpts, so about 3 minutes each, roughly. The other sort of thing that I want to talk to is there are a couple of really good books to read if you are interested in following this up. All right. Michael Frisch wrote a book called A Shared Authority, which is a really good one if you are understanding not only oral history, but other aspects of public history. And it really is this sort of shared authorship, this authority in that sense that he is emphasizing in his work. All right, so Michael Frisch has done a lot on advancing oral history. There's also some books that's doing oral history by the former historian of the Senate, Don Ritchie, a fantastic, really get up to speed very quickly type of reference. So if people are interested in doing oral history, and I hope you are, because you want to preserve those living libraries, right? These are great starting points. Okay. Now, before I start the excerpt, are there questions or comments so far? Yeah, go ahead.
How you got so interested. That comes from
That's a really good question. I remember my dad especially used to tell lots of stories when I was growing up, and I think I appreciated that. I also got to know Adam Booth here in Shepherdstown. His storytelling has a lot to do with oral history and a lot of overlap. I made some attempts, let's say, to do some family history, oral history interviews with some relatives. So I kind of got into it that way as well. So I started off in a sense with genealogy that he loved. Right? So and then I just got more and more interested in and stuck me in. And that did spit me out. All right. Any other questions before I show some of these lectures? Oh, yes.
Just a comment, my sister did an oral history with my father when he was in his 80s. And it was amazing the things he talked about that we never knew. And he talked about his experience in World War II, things like that. And it really showed me the value of sitting down and doing something like that. Incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so let me try to continue to screen share, but pull up this other tab here. That's not what I wanted to show. All right, let me start with one of these then. I'm actually going to open a new tab. I'm going to need to put the mic down and hopefully this other mic will work. Can everyone hear me now? Do I need to bend over this awkward way to get to be heard? All right, we'll do the best I can. So here is a resource that many of you might not know about.
let's just do this. Amazing how bad my typing is when I know that everyone is watching. Okay, so this is a WordPress site that I created a number of years ago, right when I did the very first project with the Entler. And there is my class there in the Entler, beginning the first of the Shepherdstown Oral History projects. And let's see, there's Jody right there. You see Jody? So taking it way back. And the first I want to show you is just a transcript. All right. So you can get a sense of what an oral history transcript might look like. All right. And I am scrolling down. I'm going to get to page 7 here. You'll see this one does not have timestamps on it. I prefer the timestamps. Now here's where I want to start. I don't know how legible that is to people in the back of the room, but I will read it. This was when we were talking about his experiences in working in the Army. So this is part of the Soldiers to Scholars program. And he says, you were working with simulators, came up earlier in the interview. I said, when I hear a simulator, I think of a computer simulation. And then Michael Sullivan says, these things were kind of crude in a way. We had 2 weapons. One was called the medium atomic demolition munition. So this is right in the height of the Cold War with all the nuclear weapons he's working with. The other was called Saddam, small atomic demolition munition. The medium was essentially a 55-gallon drum. The real McCoy would have been packed with plutonium or whatever they used. Our interface with it was mostly knowing how to set it off or disable it or this kind of thing. And there were several mechanisms. Simple locks and keys and procedures. There were radio procedures. There was a landline. You could set it off like that, like you would a typical demolition munitions. So it was kind of interesting. Well, actually, there was a fair amount of science and studying and procedures because we would have to know this stuff inside and out, and we were tested all the time. But the other part about it is we had clearances. We had secret clearances. So all the other guys would go off and train, and we would go over to our place, and we would do our little training on this equipment, the simulators. And then the sergeants we'd work with would say, okay, you guys are okay. So then we just play cards all afternoon or something. And we'd have, it's ironic, but we'd have armed guards walking around our building, and we'd be inside playing cards. The safest card game in town. All right. So this is an example of just the transcription. All right. It's very clear who the interviewer is. It's very clear who the interviewee is. It's not timestamped, so it's not ideal, but you still get a sense of the back and forth that's involved in this, right? What is missing, though, is his voice. You hear my voice, for better or for worse, but his voice is missing. So you really can't tell from the transcription sometimes whether he's being ironic or not, right? So crazy, yeah. I mean, was he laughing, thinking it was really crazy, or was this absolute lunacy to him? Is he serious? But you just don't have that dimension from just the transcript, all right? A lot of the early oral history projects destroyed their tapes or reused their tapes because they were expensive, all right? So all we have from these projects are the transcriptions, all right? They're way better than nothing, but they're not ideal, right? And you see how much is lost from this, all right? Now, I'm gonna pull up another one here. And this is also from this same webpage here, this project. And it is an interview with George Rutherford. All right, many of you know George Rutherford. And it was transcribed and edited by our very own John Deemer. Many of you also know John Deemer. All right, and I'm going to scroll down to page 17 here. Scrolling. All right, and so Mr. Rutherford is talking about some of the threats that he encountered as an African American in and traveling around West Virginia. All right. And so someone apparently was following him, stalking him. And his wife, Barbara, saw the car again outside, got the license number. My wife was a teacher's aide and her friend's husband worked for the fire department. They traced the license number to Maryland, and it had to do with where the Ku Klux Klan is located, Braddock Heights or somewhere around there. One time the car was outside again, so we called the Ransom police. The Ransom police went to the car. I can also recall the Ransom police were driving around my house at night, keeping an eye on things. Many times I had to leave at night to go to Charleston, so I wasn't home. My wife would get telephone calls when I went to Charleston for a Human Rights Commission meeting. Her caller would say, I won't be coming home. I'd stay at a hotel, and the desk clerk would say, Mr. Rutherford, you got a telephone call from someone looking for you. Then I've had my tires sliced, and Barbara had her tires sliced. For example, we had a little party, a cookout at our house one summer. I checked my tires, and 2 of them had been sliced. And then he talks about how he had this old car. He was headed to Charleston. He noticed that his gasoline levels in his car were dropping down. He made it to a rest stop in Fairmont. From there, I limped to a service station. They jacked my car up and they said the gas line was cut. The mechanic said, you shouldn't be driving this car. Do you realize it could have exploded? So someone cut the gas line in his car. All right. So we have this story, this account, this historical experience of an African American member of our community facing this deadly threat to his life and his family. All right. Pretty harrowing. A story that we might not have otherwise. What do you also notice about this transcript? There's no interviewer. All right. So John, when he put together this, he followed the Studs-Terkel model, which can be also very effective, and edited out the presence of the interviewer. All right. So only the interviewee's story is there. And that's what we really want to focus on in this case. All right. This was his experience. And so it's a very effective way of doing it. On the other hand, you don't get this sort of true to life interplay between the interviewer and the interviewee that you would get in a typical oral history. All right. Certainly has advantages and disadvantages to both approaches. Okay. All right. Now, talk about living libraries and libraries that sometimes burn down before their time. Now this one has sound, so I want to make sure that it is.
Hey Caitlin, how are you?
How are you?
I'm doing great.
This is Scott Beard, the provost at Shepherd, who died less than a year after this interview was made, in the prime of life. Just never know.
And then, for introductory stuff, this is being recorded for the lockdown and oral history of the community during the coronavirus pandemic.
And this is a student of mine doing the early part of the COVID history.
My name is Caitlin Arson. And, I have your consent to record this, right?
Yes.
And then I will, email you the deed gift, and you'll get a copy of the transcript to review and edit, and approve. And if you have any conditions related to the release of the interview, and then you can put those in the deed gift. Right.
Okay.
So we'll start with, some life history kind of questions. You want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. My name is Scott Beard, and I'm the provost and vice president for academic affairs as the chief academic officer here at Shepherd University.
So, what does a provost do?
Well, the provost does a lot of things. So at times I represent the president and the president's office at various events. And probably most familiar to people would be being the chief academic officer, meaning that I oversee all of the faculty, the student academic support services that go along with that. But here at Shepherd, I've been here about 26 years, so I've actually served every role from adjunct faculty member, initially in the Department of Music as a pianist, and then moving into administration, overseeing the graduate programs and being the associate provost, working on various nerdy things like accreditation and federal compliance, development of new programs, that type of thing, and moving into the provost role.
Cool. So when did you first start to realize that the coronavirus would become like such a serious problem?
Well, as someone who reads the news frequently, listens to broadcasts, really in January, and because of my role as the chief academic officer, I was part of a campus health task force that actually began meeting in mid-January. So I was aware then that this could be very impactful, and we wanted to be prepared as a campus as we move forward, and how that would impact our academic community as a whole.
So, did you start taking precautions back in January, or what? How
was
did your plans for change over time?
It was more planning for the institution, and on a personal level, I would say in the middle of February that I began to plan in terms of making sure I had hand sanitizer. I was part of the toilet paper brigade that was out there, but making sure that I had.
So I think we'll end with toilet paper brigade there, because we can all relate to that one. All right. So you can see this huge difference that Zoom has brought for us, right? There is just such a wealth of data here for historians later down on the road. All right. Now, the Historic Shepherdstown Commission is going to get the transcripts. They were kindly partnering with us on this project. They're going to get the transcripts, but the video and the audio are online on Shepherd's website, there for everybody to see. They're also on backup discs and so on. So that is going to make it very interesting for the future to make sure that those levels of detail are also preserved sort of moving forward, all right, for future historians. But you've got video, you've got audio, you can look at the detail. These are incredibly rich sources for future historians, all right? And moreover, most importantly of all, we all have the answer to the burning question of what a provost does. So we now know, right? I love how she was, what is a provost? I don't know, no one knows. But he did a good job of answering it. So that's another example of, I think, the powers of oral history in preserving the past, and in this with this person who certainly was taken well before his time. I don't think he had ever met him. No, I don't think he had ever met him. Yeah, no, he has not seen this interview, to my knowledge. I don't know. It's burrowed into the Shepherd webpage to that detail or not. He may have. Yeah. But now I mean, this is a great document because you know some of what the steps were for Shepherd preparing for the pandemic. And we also have this very sort of personal experience of the pandemic. So these are really, really valuable historical resources. All right, now I want to go back to this one, because we also have an absolute gem here. This is an interview that I did with, I guess I'm accepting cookies. Sorry, Jody.
From what I've got from.
So this is an interview with Keith Boyd. Keith Boyd is a member of the local African-American community. My kids knew him. He worked at Shepherdstown Daycare. I believe he still does. And so was able to interview him as part of this framework.
Being with the, choirs at the church, you know, and from being with the Brothers of Harmony, Uncle Lee, who was, you know, very musical, you know, they sort of parts and things like that, so, you know, and just another group that I think, he played instruments as well. I played the organ. How do you learn how to play the organ? Just so that one day and decided I was gonna do it and started picking out tunes and started learning how to put the chords together and even. So what's your favorite song? The one song that I sing a lot is I Won't Complain. I like that one. But mostly all the old songs, like the old hymns of the church, I like those a lot, like, you know, Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art, Jesus Keeping It Across and things, songs like that. Those are the songs that I mostly like. I like some of the modern music, but I guess I'm an old spirit because I like mostly all the old songs. What do you think about those songs, or what do you like your favorite song? Why do you like the words, because it's like they apply to your life, and they also minister to other people, you know, like when I sing, I Won't Complain, at funerals mostly, you know, people, whenever they ask me to sing, they always ask me to sing that song, and it ministers to people, you know, and it helps them during that time to, you know, to deal with what they're going through at the moment. Would you be willing to sing either that song for us now or another song? The recording here? And I think just a little bit, absolutely. Much of those now, whenever you're ready. I've had some good days, and I've had some years to climb. I've had some weary days, and some sleepless nights. But as I look around, and I think things over, all of my good days, I'll wave my hand, I won't complain. Wow. Good, yeah. What I mean, that was amazing. Thank you.
All right, so we've captured something pretty special here, I think. And that was recorded on my iPhone. Just the simple speaker of the iPhone, the recording technology has just gotten so good that you can get that kind of sound reproduction. That's remarkable. I have just one more for you tonight. Jerry, do I have time? Are we okay? Or okay, all right. So this is an interview that Brian did with Vicki Bullitt. And I'm gonna fast forward through it here. I'm gonna scan forward through it a little bit here. If I get to the right place, if I can figure out how to do that. 3255. This is complicated. I'm used to the Mac. That's going to be close enough. All right, let's see what that does. Come on, find it. You can do it.
Here in West Virginia, okay, and then I was in Buckhannon, West Virginia, and I remember it was at the end where everyone was saying, "Well, everybody's gotta go home, gotta do school, whatever else," but we were still able to work and recruit, so we had to wear our masks, and we were listening to all of the protocols, the CDC, and what they were telling, and at the point, the virus started to spread, and I wasn't even allowed to go to the office. So I said, well, I have to work from home. And, we all got permission to go home. So I came home. And it was hard because, it's like, what am I supposed to do? I gotta keep contact with mom and dad, all the little things because they needed it. But it was fearful because someone was telling me that I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. And I think that's what we're going through now. People don't want to be told, you can't do this. This is my life. This is my freedom. And, I'm going to go outside and whatever else. But I was really scared, just really afraid to go to the stores and things like that. And, just what's going to happen? The unexpected when you don't have control of something, that's where we become fearful for all things. So it was hard. And then all the kids go to school, everything's like a desert, nobody's out and about. So what do you do? So I do all my little tools, clean the house, those type of things. Because after a while, it gets built up that you can't really go anywhere. And so that gave me some time to do the spring cleaning, all the things that you're supposed to do that you put on the back burner, I had the opportunity to do. But my heart hurt because, it just took away all the things that limit your stress and made it more stressful because you couldn't do it.
Now, what kind of challenges have you experienced throughout that time from like March to, let's say, middle May when things were strictly locked down?
Yeah, see, I read, I worked out in my gym. I have, treadmill and all those type of things in my garage. I read a lot of books, listened to a lot of music, all the little things to just distract you. So it helped. And
All right, so with this one, we get a remarkable insight into the impact of COVID on everyday life. All right, and going back through this in preparation for this talk, I was amazed by how much I've already forgotten about that atmosphere, what that felt like, right? It's like it's ancient history. It's not, this was a year ago, all right, how much we've forgotten. And when I was putting together this project, this COVID project, I kept thinking about Boccaccio and the bubonic plague and the Decameron, and putting myself in the position, and this is what you really should do as an oral historian, putting yourself into the position of a historian, 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, and so on, and thinking about what they would want. I said, what would I really want to know about this event? What do I really want to know about the bubonic plague and how that impacted everyday life in the medieval period, all right? And so that was kind of the guide here. But again, thanks to Zoom, we were able to put together this project. And in particular with this new technology, we all can be oral historians and we can all keep these living libraries alive. And I'd like to close on that thought. Thank you so much for having me.
Any questions for Keith?
Let me grab the microphone.
Well, thank you all.
What's your favorite chapter?
Ooh. I like, I'm thinking of the musical now that they put together. I love the paperboy thing, the responses of interviewing this little child about what it was like on a paper rock, all right? Or the anecdotes of the housewife, all right? Things that you just simply do not have access to if it weren't for Studs Circle and his interview. So wonderful. And I find not really the chapters, but I just like the introduction because he goes behind the scenes and tells you how it's done and sort of shares that in his article that he's written about the whole process, where he shares the absolute gems that I put to work all the time and find really, really helpful.
Just one more follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
Those recorded on the radio, because he is Clark Journal, or he was Clark Journal. He did interviews live on the radio.
Are you talking about our interviews or his interviews? His interviews were radio recorded, I believe. I know that, so I'm working on a project in Wheeling, all right? And they had oral historians coming in and interviewing Wheeling's residents about their everyday experiences including with, racism and segregation persisting past when it is no longer legal to do this. And those are broadcast on the radio. So that word got out, all right, and that's an incredibly powerful medium for getting these things out. I did do an interview with the local radio station, which I talked about the project, but to my knowledge, these interviews have not been broadcast. We do have the web, all right, they're on the web, and you can access them at any time, but it's a little different, right? Because you don't really know they're there, but when you're listening to Shepherdstown local radio station, you get exposed to it, you learn about these aspects of past that was otherwise. Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
And podcast, fit in with oral history, are they sort of like a subset or an offshoot, what do you say?
I wouldn't call them a subset. So she asked about how blogs and podcasts fit in with oral history. I think that oral history can and does provide the material for podcasts and blogs, certainly. And you point to that here at the Bird Center, some of her interviews have been featured in podcasts, I believe. And I've seen reference, and it's a wonderful medium for incorporating the little sound bites into podcasts. So yes, I see oral history there, and that is as providing the raw material, the fodder for these other things. Not that they are lesser, but they are a little bit different from the more spontaneous oral history. That's the other thing. You never know what's going to come out of people's mouths in oral history. Right? Yes, go ahead.
With some of the oral history, and people were allowed to look over the transcript and that but when you have it all on video recording, that control that they have on transcript, is there any difficulty?
Yeah, so she asked about the fact that when we did oral histories in the past, we had people approve, read through their transcripts and find that they're not. That's a really important step and a really time-consuming step, right? And sometimes you can wait a really long time for the approval. In Stuart's case, you can wait a really long time for the darn thing to be done. Sorry, Stuart, I feel bad. Still working on his. It's magnificent. It's a time-consuming process. Now, this is another place where technology has stepped in. I'll get to that in a little bit before after I answer your question. So this was asking if the fact that we are putting them up on Zoom or even just the audio recording, pointing out the fact that that really changes things. And she's absolutely right, it does. They have to be willing to and know that those videos are going to be up. So it's not just reviewing the transcript, but if they run across problems, they have to sign off on sharing the audio and the video. Some people, if they have extensive requests or edits within the transcript, we simply do not post the video or the audio. You could go in there and edit that stuff out, but I don't have the computing power to do that. It can be done. It can be done on my Mac, but it's slow. Right? So people absolutely get a chance to, yes, if you are going to publicize these in any way, you need to get people's permission to do that. Absolutely. No. And thanks to AI, artificial intelligence, the transcription process has gotten a lot easier. There's a company that I work with called Otter AI, and you can upload your audio, and really within 20 minutes, they will generate a pretty decent transcription. All right. Now that transcription still requires a lot of editing or auditing. All right. And so you've got to go through it and make sure that you're correcting everything, and you've got to make sure that you don't pass the interview to get their approval. All right. And it's still a really time-consuming process. But it is infinitely having been one of the working with foot pedals and typing everything up. It is so much faster now. It's far from perfect, but it's a lot better. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead. I can try. How do I see the chat? Here's the chat. It doesn't look like there's anybody. Yeah, no questions on Zoom. Thank you for reminding me. No, I think I never used Zoom before. Oh, it's good. All right. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir. So when we launched the COVID phase 1 and phase 2 projects, we actually got a grant from the West Virginia Humanities group, and part of that was to pay my student stipends. All right, a small stipend, so they had an internship. So a little bit of background to that first story, for the first phase. So historic preservation public history requires a 400-hour internship in order to graduate, right? Advertising. And suddenly students were left high and dry because of COVID. So I forgot what they did. Well, we've got these students that definitely need internships, we've got these stories that definitely need told, let's get a grant and do it. So the students got this wonderful opportunity and they were paid for it. And that sort of enabled them to sort of progress through graduation. They received training, all right. My students who did the oral history classes received training for Patrick. I think you probably went through that training. Did you think, Marlo? Let's put you on the spot. No, my internship was first time, which was, yeah, but Brian got training, and so, yes, short answer is yes. So you can do it, you can knock it out in 4 hours, really. I'm a little bit meaner than that, I saw lots of reading. Other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Remember, our next speaker series is November the 16th on the Rutherford. And remember that we have some refreshments for you, cookies and water. Pretty simple. And the survey, if you can fill out the survey for us, it'll help us a lot with our grant efforts. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Remember when that was underway. Yeah.